Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, taking care of business on Canada's podcast network. Joining me today is Taylor Brown, Senior Policy Analyst with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thanks, Taylor, for joining us today.
Anytime. Thanks, Mario.
All right, let's talk about agriculture and labor. And the CFIB recently put out a short report on the impact that labor shortages are having on the agriculture business and the agribusiness industry. Tell me a little bit about what the impact is.
For sure. So in this report, this was actually kind of an expanded version of a submission that we wrote to the federal government as they were conducting their national agricultural labor strategy earlier this year. And here in this report, we really highlight the holistic view of what's really causing the labor shortages in agriculture and why it is so chronic. So we highlight, a few major data points that we've collected through surveys with our members. And we have some, kind of alarming findings that we have, like 4 in 5 agribusinesses would not advise someone to start a business in ag right now, given labor shortages. We still have almost 3/4 or around 74% of agribusinesses owners who are still working more hours due to chronic labor shortages. And even though this number is down since last year was at like a whopping 95%. Still, 3/4, that's a ton of owners working more hours.
Yeah, what impact does this all have on you and me, the consumer?
Right. So that's a question that we get a lot. And so, of course, we know that our agriculture sector is continuing to do the work to get everything done. They've had one of their most productive years, to date. However, that can't last forever. As I just mentioned, we're working longer hours. They're already working, incredibly long hours as it is. And, we're trying to, get retired workers to help with harvest. That's something that a lot of, agribusiness owners have been doing. And, we can't keep doing that. So as a consumer, even though we're seeing that we have produce in the grocery stores, they're really working over the limit to get us that food. And so I'm expecting to see, less availability moving forward. It's just not a sustainable industry right now.
So when you look at some of the key challenges that any business faces today, beyond the labor shortages, where you're looking at inflation, you're looking at supply chain, are those two challenges for the agriculture and food business as well?
Definitely. There are major challenges. The cost of doing business, as you know, in every industry is skyrocketed. And, farmers are not, taken away from that. They're deeply and heavily impacted by that, by ongoing environmental regulations, carbon tax, driving up the cost of fuel that they rely on. And, it's kind of really all impacting the sector. And so just having these chronic labor shortages, farmers can't even start to address them really because so much else is going on right now.
So Taylor, I want to return to a figure that you mentioned. 4 in 5 advise people not to start in this industry. Excuse me, I'm getting past this stupid cold. So 4 in 5. Boy, what does that signify or indicate for the future of this industry in Canada?
Exactly. And we do get to that in our report that, government really has to focus on the next generation of agriculture, because as it stands, if you don't have a family member already in, working in the industry with a viable business, you're not going to go into it. There's just, the education path isn't where it needs to be. We're not making the skilled workers that need to be in agriculture right now. And, we're not amplifying the beauty in our rural areas of Canada. We're not attracting more individuals to that space to pursue agriculture. And so, the Canadian Agricultural Human Resources Council did a study that we quote in the report. And they found on average, come the end of the decade, 40% of agricultural workers are set to retire across the country. And we don't have a solution to fill those empty spots.
Yeah, exactly. So, from the CFIB perspective, what is it that you're recommending that the government do in light of all the situation that's there?
For sure. So we do have quite a few recommendations in a report. However, the big ones focus on, addressing and reducing that high cost of business I mentioned before. And that has to do with implementing measures to reduce the total tax burden, the total regulatory burden, providing some tax relief in order to, hire back those older, more experienced, skilled workers. In the meantime, before we, get our younger skilled workers into the sector,
Yeah.
streamline and simplify temporary foreign worker programs and immigration, and, doing other measures such as stimulating automation to make that more of a viable option for people in agribusiness to use instead of constantly having to look for labor that just isn't there at the moment.
All right, super. Thanks, Taylor, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, Mario.
All right, that was Taylor Brown, Senior Policy Analyst for the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, taking care of business on Canada's Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us today.